Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
A few weeks ago, I saw my dear friends I haven't seen since 2019 in the fall. We met up in the Cape. On the way back on Sunday, I was on the 95 heading south to New York. I was flying directly out of LaGuardia to Birmingham when we got the notification that my flight was canceled for that evening and I was rebooked for Monday morning. Normally when you get a flight cancellation, it's pretty upsetting, but I told my dear friend Michael that as much as I would love to stay with him and his family in New Jersey, I'm going to spend the night in the city. And hopefully my wife is not going to look at the hotel bill. But I have strong affection for New York, especially as a Jew. I remember early in my life when my mom watched the great movie Crossing Delancey Street with Amy Irvine. Irvin, sorry, the pickle salesman, okay? The Lower East Side, Hester Street, but New York became the embodiment of how Jews were able to engage the American Jewish experience. New York today is home to over 1 million Jews. And moreover, when you look at New York and when you fly into the city, everyone wants that window view. It's a concrete jungle beyond imagination, and I'm talking about New York as our cantor is from Washington Heights. And to me, New York, it celebrates diversity. It celebrates the American spirit of what we can do, all the different cultures. It is the quintessential city that says, we are a modern world and we celebrate Western values and ideals. It's New York. And for the past couple of years, I've stayed in the Upper East Side. I went to the city a couple times as part of Tablet Magazine. They have these incredible dinners where we get around like a think tank and talk about Jewish ideas. And it's become familiar. And every time I'd go to New York, I'd go on these long walks. I got to the city around 3 o'clock. I checked in, and I decided I was all by myself, no wife, no kids. I'm going to have a little fun and go back to my old areas which I enjoyed walking. But immediately as I walked out of the hotel, I started to see the bring them home signs destroyed. And what I thought was going to be a great trip to New York just for one night, something changed within me. I decided to cross over to the Upper West Side. I wanted to see Columbia University for myself, ground zero of the most grotesque form of Jew hatred that we have seen since 1933. I wanted to see it firsthand. But every time I'd walk, block after block, every light post, nearly every mailbox that I came across, from garbage cans, I started noticing the amount of destroyed posters of the Bring Them Home movement. It was one of the most grotesque things that I've ever seen. I remember especially the pictures of Kfir Bibas. He's the youngest person held in captivity. He's about 17 months now. And a couple times it looked like claws going through his face. What kind of individual or individuals would do something so grotesque? I've always believed that since October 7th, and the aftermath that followed, every single Jew in the world, we are obligated to be a living witness to what we are seeing. We have to document it in some capacity to remember, because never again is now, and we have an obligation to teach it to the next generation, and the next generation. We are obligated to. So as I crossed over at 110th, I decided to take as many pictures as humanly possible of all the destroyed signs. And you can see that in our pulpit handout. And Hannah, please put it on the screen for those watching at home. You can see it in the back. From light post to garbage can to mailbox, endless pictures that I took to remember what I was experiencing as an American and as a Jew. And something unimaginable. I walked by the other Temple Emanu-El on the Upper East Side in New York, the Temple Emanu-El. And in a horrible paradox, that were destroyed, bring them home hostages signs right next to this historic multi-generational synagogue where our cantor was ordained. I've been to concentration camps before. I remember in Germany, I went to Sachsenhausen. Most of it was destroyed. We were trying to think what it was like to be Jewish in these concentration camps, but decades have passed. Even when we go to a Holocaust museum, or even when I was in Sachsenhausen, we try to force ourselves to think what it was like for those who were sent to the gas chambers. But for the first time in my life, when I saw these images destroyed, I could feel the tangibility of the pain that so many of us are experiencing. Because I know October 7th and the aftermath that followed, it is so much on your minds till today. It brings out the fear and the worst feeling that we experience in the human condition. And I've said this before, and that is uncertainty. The uncertainty of not knowing the fate of the hostages, the uncertainty of not knowing for those brave IDF soldiers who are defending our people, the uncertainty of when this war will finally come to an end and when we will have shalom, when we'll have peace. It's the uncertainty that we are constantly living with. And on top of that, it's the uncertainty that we're all experiencing regarding our own personal lives. And here we are at Parshat Hukat, the embodiment of the Torah portion that speaks to the fear, it speaks the uncertainty. In the opening verse in chapter 21, we learn that Miriam died there. And the people were so upset that they quarreled with Moses, saying, "If only we had perished before. And why have you brought this assembly, this congregation of God, to this wilderness to die, we and our animals? Why did you take us out of Egypt and bring us to this evil place? Not a place of seed, fig, or grape, or pomegranate, and there's no water to drink." And Rashi teaches us that when Miriam died, this was the death of a righteous individual. And the fact that there was no water after she died, we see that it was in her merit of the miraculous well followed the people throughout the wandering, provided a plentiful supply of fresh water. As soon as this righteous woman died, the water stopped, and the disastrous consequences found later in the chapter happened. Moses was so upset that the Israelites were in pain, that he got so frustrated by kicking the rock at Meribah and failed to give credit to God. And what was his punishment? He was prohibited, he was denied from entering into the land of Israel. But all of us can empathize with the Israelites. We are living in our own wilderness. We remain uncertain. The fear permeates everywhere we go, it seems. The social media feeds. All we want is to return to what normalcy looked like, and for us to go on our lives being happy as Jews, not being fearful. I always believe that fear begets more fear. The constant worrying that we face continues to lead to more constant worrying. If I had the magic, I wish we could take this pain away from all of us. So my take home for us, as much as these destroyed posters rip my soul and all of our souls, a symbolic nature of the most grotesque hate we have ever seen, I just read a study that 98% of French Jews have experienced anti-Semitism this past year alone. 98%. With all my sight and with all my might, as we did after 1945, as we did after 1948, I am not going to allow them to defeat us. I don't know the difference between the Dutch masters or the French painters, but I decided to do something that I want my children and their children and for this congregation and the Jewish world to see. I asked my dear friend Mark Robinson, director of our communications and marketing, I said, I want to do something with these photos. So I sent him nearly 100 photos, and he put them together. And then he found the font of Bring Them Home Now. And he put the real faces of the hostages that remain intact, that are sacred. Because as much as they can destroy our soul and spirit, they will not win this war. And I want to remind this congregation, and for those who are watching in the Jewish world, that we will get through this. I want us to document our own experiences. I want us to remember what it feels like to be a Jew at this time. But I also want you to have hope. And I have one more wish moving forward. The problem with wandering in the wilderness is that the Israelites did not know how to become unified. We saw this in the previous parashah with the failed rebellion with Korach, and now the anger and frustration with the lack of sustenance that's in the wilderness. Unity, unity, and unity. For the Jewish world. I don't care if one is a Republican, if one is a Democrat. I don't care if one roots for Alabama or Auburn. This is our moment to embody the Joshua and the Calebs that knew that we can defeat this fear. We put aside that we're a Reformed Jew. We put aside that we are a conservative Jew. We put aside that we're an Orthodox Jew. We put aside that we go to shul on Overton Road or down the street. We have got to put that aside and realize that all of us were standing at that Sinai moment. Because if we're going to get through this, we don't have a Moses anymore. We don't have a Begin anymore. We don't have one voice. We're Jews. Unity, unity, unity. And I know that's going to be hard, especially in an election year. But at the end of the day, remember two things. Every human being is 99.9% the same, our physiology, what we make up. And we're Jews. We've been in this hole, and we know the way out. But we do that by being together. Shabbat Shalom.